Welcome back to Hyperloops Games. It's time for another Star Wars Destiny video. Okay, so that was just the throwback to the Tiny Grimes and did the ghetto setup. But breakdown is we're going to be looking at the rules reference guide and what changes came about. Not too many things. About 7 things to look at. Clarified health, clarified downgrades, updated choosing character subtypes, piloting. So for those of you that weren't too familiar with how that worked, well, we'll go over that. Updated the character subtypes, updated clarifications, pretty much moving rocks, but we'll get there. And updated the FAQ. So let's go straight to it. We'll just start jumping to the pages. So it's page 5 for the first one, health. So when an ability refers to a character's health, it is referring to their total health, not their remaining health. This is important for some of the new removal. We have a new piece of removal that's if you're if you have a spotted character that has 10 or more health, and you can remove a die. If you can spot a character with 15 or more health, you can remove 2 dice. So that matters because when you do Fortitude, it'll give +4 health to a guy. So then you can use that spell event to remove 2 dice. The odd part about it is I think it's a hero card, so none of the villains can run it. So that immediately shoots out your 15 actual health characters. So you'd have to play Fortitude to kind of get value from that, or additional value from it. But outside of that, pretty generic. Just character cells, just the total health, not their health remaining. Nothing big there. I don't think there's too much to confuse it. Just that one interaction of the card, which I really can't remember right now. I kind of wish I did the extra homework to get that down. But there is a piece of removal. You'll definitely find it. I believe it's red. So then from there we get the clarification on downgrades. So if a downgrade has a matching die, that die is rolled into its controller's pool after the attached character is activated. A downgrade is controlled by the player that played it, even though it's in an opponent's play area. So what'll happen is there's new downgrades that have the die. You would play the downgrade on the opponent's guy. If they roll it in, it'll roll into your pool. All right. Let's see. There is a weird thing here, though. Downgrade is controlled by the player that played it, even though it's in an opponent's play area. So, I remember having a discussion with somebody about the downgrade limits, and they talked about removing downgrades once you hit 4, but I remember the discussion being something different from what I'm reading here right now. That may have got cleaned up if there was an error, maybe? But we'll go straight to 15 for the next one. Pretty cut and dry. A lot of this stuff wasn't anything we didn't really know about. They added the subtype pirate. I think they snuck in the word Ewok here because they probably forgot it last time. So like I said, nothing large with this one. But the next one's where we kind of delve into stuff that's much more relevant. So we get piloting now. So piloting is after a character with piloting is activated, its controller may choose a vehicle they control and activate it. That character is piloting that vehicle. Piloting expires at the end of the round. A character can only pilot one vehicle at a time. A single vehicle can be piloted by more than one character. If a character starts piloting a vehicle, they are no longer piloting any vehicle they were previously piloting. A character is no longer piloting a vehicle if the vehicle they were piloting leaves play. And a vehicle is no longer being piloted if all of its pilots leave play. A character can pilot an exhausted vehicle even if they were unable to activate it. So there was a lot of words there. But the rough breakdown is that if you had any effects, let's say you admiraled a guy that had piloting, you couldn't pilot 3 vehicles at one time. It's one at a time. The other thing there is if you activated your vehicles first and you did stuff, then later in the round you could activate the character with piloting to then have that vehicle be piloted. It's relevant for things like Luke 4, who can increase the value of a piloted vehicle die by 1 when you resolve it, so that you're not just kind of rolling into it and then your opponent casts mitigation. You can sit there and have vehicles and have it on this damage, and the opponent has to figure whether to mitigate it or not. And then if they don't mitigate it and you kind of get through like big chunks of the round, somewhere in later you could just decide, okay, now I'll pilot it and then I'll resolve it. So that's very relevant there, to be able to pilot a tapped vehicle. And then also we noticed some of the vehicles said, for each character piloting this, give it a shield like when this is resolved. Or a slave one where each time it was piloted, it would deal a damage. So, very relevant things, especially if you're playing like eject and like multiple pilots. You want to be able to potentially have different choices with like an eject. So it's an interesting concept there. But like I said, it's pretty cut and dry. A lot of the time we didn't have this full text, so people were questioning like, hey, can you pilot a tapped vehicle? Like, how's this work? And it seemed a little weird. But this right here broke it down pretty much as simple as it could be, I feel. So if you guys have questions, always feel free to ask. I'll try to do my best to explain. For the most part, this makes perfect sense as far as I'm concerned. All right, so we'll get down to 24, which is the character subtypes. So Hondo gained pirate now. Relevant if you run, Gandork's famous Greg and Hondo solidarity. By famous, I mean some crackhead shit. He's gonna listen. He'll love this. But yeah, pretty much just Hondo in there. Like I'm saying, like this RRG wasn't a huge update. It was just really to clarify piloting for us. Some minor things they were missing from the book. And then once we get to the clarifications, we're going to get hit to stop some of the combos that were silly. So we'll start with Moving Rocks. Moving Rocks is a 3-cost ability. Let me actually just look it up real quick for you guys so we can show it, because it's kind of relevant to talk about it. It was a theorized combo with the Deathstar plot, the one that for the shields. So I'll bring this in over here. So Moving Rocks, spot an apprentice or a Jedi to move any number of shields to any number of characters. So the Deathstar setup would have let you, in theory at the time, because you have 20 shields, take those shields off and move them to your guys. And because they had changed the rule with being able to move shields over past the limit and they just kind of like fall off, it would have meant you would have been able to Moving Rock all 20 of the shields and kind of just, ruin an opponent. Actually, we can just leave that there in case we got to look up something else in a second. Just for reference, I can go look up that mitigation we were talking about, or I was talking about. That's hero. Alright, future events. Feat of Strength. It's spot a character that has 10 or more health to remove a die showing damage, or up to 2 dice showing damage instead of a character that has 15 or more health. So largely relevant there. We'll come back over Coaxium Heist. I guess having this up is great. Coaxium Heist is neutral, and it's the 0-cost plot. I'm really bad at doing it this way right now, though. There we go. So it's include only if you bring a set-aside Pike Sentinel to the game. After setup, add that character to an opponent's team. If no opponent controls a Pike Sentinel, set this plot aside and remove 4 of your dice, each showing different symbols to gain 10 resources. So Pike Sentinel is a 6-cost, 7-health character that has Guardian. It's largely relevant there because what happens now is after the Pike Sentinel you brought to the game with the card is defeated, place it in your set-aside zone as a defeated character. What that means is that when you go to time procedures, if you killed the Pike that you gave the opponent, it actually counts against you. So if you go to time, that's an extra 7 health that you would have lost. So it puts you in a bad predicament there from that perspective. So something very relevant to know. Because I could see that coming down to a situation where people just didn't know that they would die via that. Commander Pyre and Cruel methods. If you do not control the battlefield and then claim the battlefield, Command Pyre and Cruel methods will each only trigger once. So the way they had adjusted the rules before was that they had allowed you to move the battlefield first, and as part of the claim. So what would happen is like if you had claimed, it would have technically done a trigger, and then moving the battlefield was part of the effect from claiming, so it would have shifted sides, and then you would have got another ping. So they clarified here to make sure that you knew that you only get 1 damage off of it. Based on the regular wording, you know, we would have just went with 2 because that's the way it was set up. But this here is to just pretty much try to make sure that that's not busted, right? Realistically, it probably needed to do the 2 on that, but whatever, we'll find out. Deathstar plans. If an opponent moves this card to one of their characters, they gain control of this card. So Deathstar plans is something that we talked about a couple times, but it's this card. Exhaust this upgrade to place 1 resource on or remove 2 shields from your Deathstar plot. After an opponent's effect deals damage to attached character, they may move this card to one of their characters. So they're essentially just saying that, like, even though it's on the opponent's character, like, they'll actually control it. Therefore, you couldn't just like have it hide on their guys and then start using it. Jedi Trials. It just talks about letting a character have the 3rd character die, and the character is still considered elite. So if you know, there could be some potential bad thought process where if you had elite already and you had 2 dice that you couldn't get a 3rd one, right? But this is just letting you know what you can. For anyone that's wondering, Jedi Trials is a particularly hard card to kind of get going. So Jedi Trials, spot an apprentice character that has 3 blue abilities, 3 shields, and its character dice are showing a combined value of 3 or more. Then you heal 3 damage from it, ready it gains Jedi, and it gains a die. So, like, the overall effect is quite strong. When you think, like, all right, you know, it was 2 plot points, you get 3 health, which is about a resource and a half. You ready it, which is probably worth at least like 2 resources. You gains Jedi, don't usually care about that, and it gains a die, which is probably about another 2 resources worth of stuff, depending on what it is. But it has to be an apprentice, and this is a hero setup, so like it's going to be tough there to make sure that you have 3 value showing, because they could just mitigate 1 die, and then like you can't get this going. Plus you put 3 blue abilities on it, and they kind of know that they need to focus that person down. We did get a 0-cost card that makes a person an apprentice, so there's some sneaky ways to do things. But yeah. Magna Glove, you gain control of the equipment or weapon upgrade you moved onto your character with this special ability. So that one's pretty generic. Magna Glove lets you spend resources equal to the cost of an opponent's equipment or weapon to move it to your guy. So like if you get redeploy, or if it has redeploy, then if your guy goes to die, you can shift it to one of your other guys. But pretty generic, you know, just how the effect works. Tactical delay. This after ability triggers and resolves before the first turn of each round. So tactical delay is the new card that comes with 2 resources on it. After the action phase begins, remove 1 resource from the support. Then if no resources are on it, discard it to gain 2 actions. So what will happen is this. If let's say this is your card and the opponent has the battlefield, these 2 actions will go before the action they get to start. If it's for yourself, these 2 actions will be before your actual turn. So it's an interesting concept there. Then trust your feelings. If you use the action on the destroy the Deathstar plot with this card, that action ability is added to the queue and resolve after each ability that was already in the queue. That one's a little wordier. Let's go double check the card. So it's reroll up to 2 of your dice, then you may resolve 1 of your dice. Then you may use the action on your plot titled Destroy the Death Star for free. Okay, so it's essentially saying if you played a card that like played this for free, but these were already on the, like, you know, you're in the middle of a queue chain or something, it would do the Death Star plot after the other cards resolved. We don't really have event responses in here for counters, but triggered abilities, this is where it would become relevant. There is another event that affects Trust Your Feelings. Should be a hero card. I believe it's red. Finding it's the hard part. Trench Run? Yeah. So, like, if you were in the middle of trench run, you could, like, trench run to activate, and then your opponent might have, like, suppressive fires or something. So then this plays the Trust Your Feelings. The Trust Your Feelings would go and, like, re-roll the dice. Then you would Deathstar trigger, but the suppressive fire would already be going off for, like, your pilot. So the suppressive fire would have to finish before you get to do the Deathstar plot ability. Yeah, I know. It's a bunch of crazy shit, and it's probably not going to come up, but they did cover their butt, so that's at least very nice. But, like, yeah. From there, just an FAQ point, a couple questions. If I use a Mace Windu's power action to play Knighthood on a non-Jedi character, will that character get one shield? So Mace Windu's ability is you can look at the top power action, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may play an upgrade from among them. Place the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. If that upgrade was played on a Jedi, give it a shield. So what happens is Knighthood makes someone a Jedi, but there's a minor complication. So attached character gains Jedi. After you play this upgrade, you may give a character one shield. The problem is if that upgrade was played on a Jedi. So what happened is when you attempted to play the upgrade, it wasn't a Jedi at the time, so it doesn't gain the shield. If it said if that upgrade is played on a Jedi, like if it said if that upgrade is on a Jedi, give it one shield, it would have given you the extra shield, because what would happen is it's playing it from here, it stops, the Knighthood's in play. Now it goes, okay, is the upgrade on a Jedi? It would have seen a Jedi and it would have gave a shield. But because if that upgrade was played on a Jedi, at the time of it being played, the game knows that the character was not a Jedi. Therefore, you do not get the one shield from the Mace ability. You do get the one shield from the Knighthood ability, though. If I include Rule of 2 with my deck without a Sith character, can I draw a card with Dr. Aphra 20? No. Rule of 2 will be set aside during Step 1 of Setup, and you'll deal 1 indirect damage to yourself. Dr. Aphra's ability will trigger and resolve, but since you don't put your deck into play until Step 3, you'll have no deck to draw from. There was some discussion on the Facebook pages. I mentioned this rule and then showed the setup. But just for the sake of it, we'll go look at it, and we'll also look up at Rule of 2. So we'll go look at Rule of 2 first. I've written an article about it. So most of you, I assume, by now right now, if you do not control exactly 2 characters, one that is a Sith and the other an apprentice, set this plot aside and deal 1 indirect damage to yourself. So this would trigger right away. But in the setup here, we have each player places their character and plot cards face up in front of them along with those character matching dice. That's step 1. Step 3 is where you get to the shuffle the deck. So, step 2 is the battlefield. Step 3 is each player shuffles their deck and draws 5. So, even though they don't say, put your deck in play, this is the first instance of recognizing the deck. So what ends up happening is your characters and plot go in, the plot immediately finds out, hey, where's the Sith guy? It's like, all right, well, I'm heading out of here. Bam, you take 1. So Aphra would take the 1 trigger, but the deck's not in play, so you don't have a card to draw from. Oddly enough, that would have been hilarious if deck out rules were just, when you try to draw a card and can't, you lose. Because then people could play that and just kill themselves. Like, you just go into a tournament and, like, concede every round 1. But that's not how this works in this game. So, but that's the breakdown. That's everything we have here for the updated RRG. Pretty much not much to see. Like I said, it's moving rocks, clarification on piloting, and just some very, very minor things. But hope I was able to help. You guys have a great one. Thanks for watching, and shout out to Tiny Grimes for having us around, playing with us back in the day. Definitely got to get him on a podcast. So we got to ask him though, I think, at that point. But it'd be interesting and fun. But shout out to a legend. Have a good one, guys. Deuces.